Welcome into another edition of the Yinziders podcast. I'm Jenna Harner. He is the Athletics' Mike DeFabo. Mike, the Steelers back in the win column. I think everybody in Pittsburgh breathed a sigh of relief while also at the same time looking at the game and sitting there on their couches, on their recliners afterward and saying, how on earth did the Steelers win this game? It was the 5 turnovers. That's how they won this game. But just what can we make of this team after the first 3 weeks? Because there's still so many question marks in my mind.
I feel like this was a classic Steelers game where you come out of it thinking, okay, the Patriots possessed the ball for such a majority of the time. They executed these long drives that were time-consuming, and yet a couple of key turnovers and the Steelers win the game. And as I was sitting there watching the game, I couldn't help but think back to last year because so often the Steelers gave up a ton of yards, but they led the league or were tied for the league lead with the Vikings in turnovers forced, and that ultimately was enough to get them to 10 wins and to qualify for the playoffs. The problem is when you play a quality team that isn't going to beat itself, is that sustainable? And last year, it was not. When you play a good team that isn't going to beat itself, you can't count on them turning the ball over 5 times. And even if they do turn the ball over, they're good enough to overcome it. So I feel like this defense really has a ways to go, and they need to find ways to get off the field in a traditional way.
And that was something that TJ Watt said after the game, as well as in his availability on Monday of this week, I believe. That's something we heard from Mike Tomlin. Like TJ Watt said, they're playing too much football as a defense right now, which obviously isn't what you want to be doing. But again, they're finding ways to create these turnovers that get them off the field, and 2 of them completely take points away when you're in the end zone, or with the second Ramondre Stevenson fumbles right outside.
The 2 that Cam Hayward had, he got his hand on the pass. It was then intercepted by Brandon Echols, and then later he forced a fumble literally on the goal line. Right there, that's 14 points. And I think that if you add those 14 points to the Patriots total, that score would be more indicative of how the game actually unfolded. And again, you can't just count on those things going forward. So, I think there was some growth in a couple areas. I think that they were marginally better against the run. And I think Derek Harmon in particular, he looked really good. Through training camp and through the preseason, he's really been as advertised. And he was really the one personnel change that you were counting on to make a difference against the run. And I think you're seeing the difference of him being in there versus when he's not. But there needs to be more than just, hey, the rookie is going to come along and save the run game, run defense. Like, there has to be more than that if you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I liked what we saw a lot from Harmon. I loved the game from Cam Hayward. Obviously, TJ Watt getting more involved, getting, on the stat sheet the way that he did, his first sack of the season. Like, there were so many pieces and so many guys getting involved in terms of that defensive line and in terms of that pass rush compared to what we've seen. Did you think that was just based on what we saw from New England, or is that something where, hey, they're getting, I don't want to say getting their feet under them because I don't think that's the right phrase, but this defense is finding ways to win against the opposing offensive line and get to the quarterback in ways that we didn't see the first 2 weeks?
Well, there were some things that were a little bit different schematically. They stunted a little bit more on the defensive front, which I think was helpful to them. But even going into this game, a lot of the underlying numbers like time to pressure and pressure percentage were really good for the Steelers, even though the sack numbers weren't there. And so what that tells me is they need to be a little stickier in coverage because they talk so much about how the rush and coverage work together and they work hand in hand. And the rush, I think, was pretty much doing its part in terms of getting there, but the coverage wasn't holding up long enough. And so I think the hope, if you're a Steelers fan, when Joey Porter Jr. eventually returns, maybe the secondary can play more man coverage. Maybe they can mix their coverages and confuse the quarterback a little bit more. Maybe they can disguise the middle of the field a little bit more. And all those things on the back end can help those guys up front get home. Because I think they have the rushers to do it, especially with Harmon in the fold. But those guys in the back end, they have to hold up long enough for the guys to get home up front.
You mentioned Joey Porter Jr., Mike Tomlin on Tuesday talking about there, is a chance that Porter Jr. and Deshaun Elliott can return this week. We're going to have to kind of see how they go through the week of practice. Watching Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays availability is going to be a big thing if they get out onto the field, because correct me if I'm wrong, both have not even had a limited practice since those injuries.
Right. They've been working kind of off to the side. The one that I'm not really sure, I don't have any inside information on Joey Porter Jr., but I think that there's a real chance that we see Deshaun Elliott this week. I would keep an eye on him. And I think that he's important because when they lost Minkah Fitzpatrick, they lost kind of like that quarterback on the back end. And you were counting on Deshaun Elliott to not only play to the same level he did last year when he was a pleasant surprise, but even take it a step further. And I think that they were going to modify some of their schematics, use him more than just in the box as a run-stuffing kind of safety. They haven't been able to do that yet. So you would hope that if the Steelers get Deshaun Elliott back, that can give them a big shot in the arm. But they did make some personnel changes, and I think that they were intentional. We saw it on kind of all three levels. In the secondary, Jabril Peppers, I think, was a very welcome addition. I think that he was very physical in the run game. He obviously forced and then recovered a fumble. But just having a guy who is very versatile and very multiple, he can play both safety positions, he can play a little bit of nickel, he can play like a dime linebacker if you need him to. I think just having that kind of a guy is going to help the Steelers in a variety of ways, and I think even once they get healthier in the secondary, they might be able to find a role for him. Then at the linebacker level, the change they made was playing Cole Holcomb more. And I think a lot of people were looking at just the raw stats of okay, he played 37 snaps to Peyton Wilson's 35, and they said, okay, yeah, he overtook Peyton Wilson. Well, there's more to it than that. Really, what it came down to is they wanted, next to Patrick Queen, a more physical run-stuffing linebacker on obvious running downs and against 12 personnel, so 2 tight ends. And the Patriots run a lot of 2 tight end sets. And so he was going to be that guy against 12 personnel. And then Peyton Wilson was going back to his old role last year, which was in nickel, when they spread out in 11 personnel. That's when he's going to have his coverage ability shine. And I'm kind of interested to see what happens long term there. If Cole Holcomb ultimately continues to be a player on the rise and ends up locking down what was the old Landon Roberts role on rundowns. Because I'm actually pretty high on Juwan Bentley. I think that he is an even more physical, downhill kind of guy, kind of an AFC North style inside linebacker. Bill Belichick always loved those old school traditional inside linebackers, and so it was perfect that he ended up going to New England and starting his career there. He was a captain there. He has a lot of leadership qualities. I'm interested to see how much does he have left? He's in his late 20s at this point. Obviously was cut by the Patriots, so I'm kind of curious about that. And then up front, I think we didn't see as much of Daniel Ekuwale as I thought, but I've really been impressed by what I've seen from Ekuwale and underwhelmed by what I've seen by Keanu Benton. I wonder how much more we might see Ekuwale. And today Mike Tomlin talked about hey, he's our nose, so if he's not playing a lot of snaps, it means we're getting off the field and teams aren't getting a lot of first downs. So how the staff feels about Daniel Ekuwale isn't necessarily reflected in the raw snap counts. It's more so you have to take into it context and situation and things like that.
You mentioned getting off the field, and I think one of the things that concerns me the most right now with seeing this defense is the 3rd and longs they're giving up, and especially coming into this game against the Vikings, that is going to be massively crucial because you see it's 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, and teams are not only getting close, they are blowing those out of the water. They'll have a 20-yard completion, a 23-yard completion, and this isn't Lamar Jackson and the Ravens we're talking about. This isn't Josh Allen and the Bills. this is Drake May and the Patriots. This was Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. Like, they're not doing it against teams that, yes, I know we're kind of finding the identities of these teams and it's still so early in the season, but these are not the best of the best teams. And that is back to with what TJ Watt said. Like, they're staying on the field far too long. You're seeing them, create these third and longs, but they can't get off the field time and time and time again. It's felt like definitely noticeably the last 2 weeks in particular.
Yeah, I felt like in the Patriots game, one of the things that stuck out to me was just Drake May seemed to be really carving up the zone coverages, finding the soft spots in the zones. And just more broadly through the first 3 weeks, giving up explosive plays has been a problem for them. And when you're giving up explosive plays on the ground and through the air, inevitably some of those are going to come on third downs, and then you're going to have a hard time getting off the field or forcing punts. It's a number of things. You can't just point your finger at one thing and say, here's the fix, because since it's happening both on the ground and through the air, it's happening on various parts of the field, it's not just one thing, it's a lot of different things. And that's why holistically they have a lot to clean up on defense.
Let's look offensively, because I think something that really stuck out to me was after the game, Aaron Rodgers was talking about just how it was so hard to get into a rhythm. I think they had 3 possessions the first half that, you're scoring on 2 of them, which is great. We'll get to red zone offense later on. But to me, it was so hard when you looked at the third quarter of that game particularly, and again, moving it forward here. But not being able to get in that rhythm, and the offense came out in that third quarter and looked like offenses we've seen of Steelers past. And I don't want to generalize, every team is different, every quarterback's different, all that stuff. But to me, when they came out after the defense forces back, fumbles on back-to-back drives, and the offense goes 3 and out, it wasn't going to be a recipe for success. And that does make you wonder, okay, what happens when this team can't get into the red zone and find the success that they've been finding over the last couple of games?
Yeah, they definitely have to find a way to have a more fluid offense. And I feel like a big way to unlock that is just running the football more effectively. I think when I look at this team, and now through 3 games, there's some trends and we're starting to get a feel of what this team is going to be like. The way that this offense can be successful is if they run the ball effectively between the 20s, and they need to continue to capitalize on yards after catch, because right now they are 32nd in air yards per attempt, just 5 air yards per attempt, but number 1 in yards after the catch per completion. And a lot of teams with an older quarterback who's less mobile, especially with an offensive line like the Steelers have that's young and still developing, you want to get the football out of the quarterback's hands quickly. And the problem the Jets had last year is when you don't get yards after catch, then you're basically counting on Aaron Rodgers to orchestrate these big 12, 15-play pass-heavy drives where he has to be so perfect and so precise because everything's a 4, 5, 6-yard completion. But when you have a DK Metcalf who can make a guy miss, throw a guy to the ground, create after. You've got a guy like Calvin Austin who is dangerous in space. Jonnu Smith who can take a screen pass and turn it into an explosive game. That's where I feel like this offense can be successful between the numbers. And then they do have the pieces and the right quarterback to continue to be an efficient red zone offense. And of all the things the Steelers are doing right now on both sides of the ball, the thing that I feel best about is their red zone offense. And some of it is the personnel, some of it's the play calling, but the personnel, Rodgers still has that lightning quick release. That still marries well with DK Metcalf beating your number 1 defensive back on a slant, on an out, on a jump ball. Same thing with, you can create a mismatch with Darnell Washington. You can hand the ball to Jonnu Smith on a jet sweep, and he has the speed to get the edge. All those things I think are going to continue to be true for this offense. And so I think the biggest way that they can improve and start being like a really competent offense is the success between the 20s, because I think they're going to continue to be good in the red zone, but if you're not in the red zone enough, it's not going to really be a factor.
And when was the last time we heard Mike Tomlin give so much praise to the offense the way that he did in his opening monologue, talking about he specifically, he'll, if, you and I obviously listen to him every week and we're in those press conferences, but for the general public that maybe doesn't listen to him all the time, like there are very little tidbits and little things that you pick up and mannerisms that Mike Tomlin has, but he's very intentional with the way he singles things out, and I think that was something that was very intentional for him when we heard that earlier Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just something that they can be proud of because right now, like, I don't know, run defense needs to be a lot better. The pass defense needs to be a lot better. the passing game needs to be a lot better. The running game needs to be a lot better. The offensive line play and the protection needs to be a lot better. There's so many things that they need to improve upon. It's really, truly the one thing that I can point to that it's like yards after catch and red zone are the two things that I think the Steelers are doing well right now.
Take a quick break. We're going to let you fix whatever's happening with your microphone. When we come back, we will be joined by the Athletics' Alec Lewis. He covers the Vikings, gives us tons of great insight. Stick with us. This is the Yinziders podcast.
All right, we now welcome onto the show a very special guest. He covers the Vikings for The Athletic, Alec Lewis. Thank you so much for joining us here. Now, Alec, let's start here. The Steelers forced 5 turnovers in the last game, and I wrote about how the Steelers have this turnover culture. You can win a shirt if you produce a turnover. They talk about in every meeting, turnover, turnover, turnover. They show film of guys punching at the ball, examples of when they could have punched at the ball and didn't. I go to tweet my story this morning, and I look, and like the tweet right before there is Alec has basically written the same exact thing. Tell us a little bit about that 5 turnover performance that the Vikings had last week.
Yeah. First, you called me a very special guest. That's the first person who's ever said that to me in joining a show. The second thing I'd say is it's nice that you would have me on before Kevin Fishbane of his illustrious podcast. So I'm grateful to be here. Yeah, turnovers and being all about the ball is like the number one priority or component of Kevin O'Connell's football philosophy. And it derives from his time in Los Angeles. You know this, Mike and Jenna, you guys both know this. It's like turnovers are the most indicative stat to winning. If you look at, after a game ends, if you look at the box score and all you looked at was turnovers, the odds are probably around 70% that the team that won that margin probably won the game. And so that's how the Vikings have oriented a lot of their coaching priorities in meeting rooms. Like we go out to practice for 15 minutes every day and they're diving on these big blue mats, punching balls out. It doesn't seem like it has any bearing on anything NFL related. And then when they produce a performance like that in the locker room after, the players say that's why we do it in practice and it all makes sense. But it was wild. Isaiah Rodgers, this unheralded cornerback, really, who the Vikings signed in free agency for a little amount of money, who had been with Philadelphia and Indianapolis before that. He had 2 defensive touchdowns and 2 forced fumbles in the first half of the game. That had never been done in an NFL game in general. He did it in a half, so it was wild. But this defense with Brian Flores at the helm has been the rock of this team now for multiple years, and so it wasn't surprising to see them lead the way on Sunday.
Yeah, just one quick point, Jenna, before you can ask your next question. But you're like saying if you only looked at the box score and only looked at turnovers, that would tell you who won the game. Steelers in their last game lost every single statistical category other than turnovers, and yet they still somehow found a way to win. So very much to your point.
Yeah, it's
and
crazy. It really is. It's like I remember like I first started covering the NFL in 2022. I think I know a lot about football. Turns out I know nothing. Probably still know nothing, but maybe know a little bit more. And like one of the first things is like turnovers are the most indicative predictive stat to winning. Then explosive plays, and it seems so simple, but it's like a missed exchange on a read option play that's fumbled probably weighs so heavily in the game. So crazy, but it's how it goes.
And I have to kind of laugh a little bit at your tweets because I was looking just through some of the things you were saying about the game, and you're like, all right, scheduled tweet or something like that. The Bengals just fumbled the ball again. And I feel like that's exactly what we were tweeting when we were watching the Steelers force 5 turnovers against the Patriots on Sunday. So just interesting parallels in that way, too. But you did have a very interesting tweet where you said, has an NFL defense ever disguised like this? And you have a clip of the All 22, and it's the Vikings defense going from an all out blitz look to man coverage to Tampa 2 to, I think, quarters on the other side. And I mean, watching that clip is just fascinating, and just the way that the Vikings disguise and are changing and all of that. Just speak a little bit about Brian Flores' uniqueness and kind of just how he schemes up ridiculously insane coverages in this way that he does.
Yeah, it's been crazy to watch the evolution. I mean, you guys know he gets here in 2023. The Vikings had the most passive defense of all time in Kevin O'Connell's first year. It was Ed Donatel who tried to bring a Fangio system and failed very bad, and they lost a playoff game to Daniel Jones, and that was probably partially the reason the Giants ended up paying Daniel Jones. So you peel the layers back, it's pretty wild. Brian Flores gets here, the personnel was pretty lacking. So they had in 2023, it was either all out blitz or drop eight. Like, it was the most weird defensive scheme probably that's been run in recent memory. Then the personnel improved a little bit. Last year, it became a little more normal. They were playing a ton of different zone coverages. And then this year, they've improved and added on the interior defensive line. They've gotten younger at corner. And they're just a little bit more multiple. And so you've just seen, like, the way a coach described it to me last year was they took it from the old internet days to like high speed internet to now it's like AI version is the way they've tried to talk about it. And they play just a ton of different coverages that can look like every other coverage that they run, and they really stress you up front. And so it's this combination of it stresses the O-lineman, it stresses the quarterback on the fly, it stresses the offensive coordinator, and they do it at a level that's just like it's constant disruption, constant aggressiveness. And you also, for as much credit as Brian Flores deserves, part of the reason they are able to be as crazy and wacky as they are is because the players are so smart. They have such a high level of aptitude to where what he draws up in a meeting room during the week or even during the game at halftime, they have the ability to apply on the fly. So it's this perfect blend of coaching, kind of vision, and a group of players' ability to intake all of that. And it's been fun to watch, really, from the time he got here. It's every single week. You just don't know what you're going to get, and it's why you watch the All 22 and laugh as you're doing it.
I think it's going to be a really awesome matchup between Brian Flores going against Aaron Rodgers, because when the Steelers signed a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, they acknowledged, like, there are going to be some ways that he's not physically the same as what he was in his prime. But what they were betting on is his mind being able to process the game at a really high level, his experience that he's seen so many different defenses, so many different coverages, and then just his ability to manipulate the defense at the line of scrimmage. So I think it's going to set up this really awesome cat and mouse game at the line of scrimmage between Flores and Rodgers. But it did not go well for Rodgers last time these two met. I have some stats since I did my research, Alec. We're very professional in this podcast.
Good job.
Last year, he threw 3 interceptions. He had a QB rating of 54.9, the second worst of his season. He had a completion percentage of 53.7, second worst of his season. And maybe the worst stat of all was he was negative .64 EPA against the blitz. So the blitz in particular really gave him a hard time. What do you remember about that matchup and why it was such a nightmare day for Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, it was last year, week 5 in London. So, of course, these two get to match up again across the pond. It's great for that to be the case. I remember Andrew Van Ginkel intercepting Aaron Rodgers near the line of scrimmage, and later in the game, Rodgers like looking at Van Ginkel, or they had a little back and forth. I'll also say So what you said is perfect. Like Aaron Rodgers, so much of his ability is at the line of scrimmage pre-snap. And so much of what the Vikings do defensively, they are pre-snap checking. So it becomes almost this cat and mouse, mano a mano, like which side can get into the best possible play before the snap type of kind of competition. And the orchestrator on the back end, Harrison Smith, he and Aaron Rodgers are close. They've played against each other now, seemingly because they're both 90 years old. They've played each other hundreds of times. And they have immense respect for each other. They played golf together in the off seasons. So it's definitely a fun matchup. Kevin O'Connell last year before the game called Aaron Rodgers like a supercomputer. And so it will be very interesting to see how the Vikings approach it compared to last year. I remember last year, the Vikings never played the coverage two-man. And then for some reason in that game against the Jets, they played like 13 snaps of two-man out of nowhere. And it was like, we didn't even know they had that in their disposal. So it will be fascinating to see how both sides really try to go against each other. I think the blitz probably worked because, as you guys have probably found out, Aaron is not the creator outside of the pocket that he once was. So I wouldn't be shocked if they take a similar approach. I also wouldn't be shocked if they rush four and let Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen try to eat. Like, this is a different interior of the defensive line than it was last year. So it'll be fun. Another overseas matchup between these two really high-level operators.
Now, before we transition a little bit to offense, sticking on the defensive side one more time, did I see you caught a couple strays from Jonathan Grenard post game? Did that happen?
Absolutely. There was I think, you guys know how this is with the aggregators these days. Like, and everyone's got a podcast. You guys have one. We all do. And like, so anything that's said gets aggregated. There was another writer in the market who said that the vibes were low. Jonathan Grenard obviously mixed my name with that writer, and I was right there. And I was scared that they all hated me at that point because that's how it goes. And I have a lot of respect for Jonathan and the team. And the vibes were probably where they needed to be after they got beat by a Falcons team that just lost to the Panthers. But yeah, it was rough. It was this back and forth in the locker room. It made me very anxious and nervous and all that. But no, it was a fun little back and forth. I'm looking forward to seeing them and joking about it.
That's
We're
awesome.
letting the we're letting the people know you did not say the vibes were not good. You were not the perpetrator in that event there. Let's transition to the offense a little bit because they already ruled JJ McCarthy out as he's still dealing with that injury. So it's week 2 here of Carson Wentz. What did you see out of Wentz in this win? What did you see from him? How did he look out there?
Yeah, Carson Wentz did what they had not done in 7 of 8 quarters to start the season. He operated the offense effectively. It wasn't anything more drastic than that. He progressed in rhythm fairly well. He was fairly accurate. These were kind of baseline measures that just we didn't really see with JJ McCarthy throughout the first 2 weeks. What's interesting about this game is the Vikings will have Jordan Addison back, and Jordan Addison is an elite receiver. He was the best offensive player in training camp, and I imagine he has a lot he will have a lot he wants to prove beginning this weekend. So, like, this Vikings offense gathering some momentum, running the football effectively, having Christian Darrisaw back at left tackle, having an experienced signal caller in Carson Wentz, now with Jordan Addison, it becomes a pretty, interesting and pretty dynamic group. It's just going to be a matter of can Carson Wentz continue to operate effectively from the pocket in the short term? Can he be accurate? Those have been the two I'd say questions in the recent parts of his career, but it was definitely like a momentum game Sunday against the Bengals defense that was not exceptional. So we'll see how things look against the Steelers defense that I haven't studied enough, but it doesn't sound like they are the most disguise heavy team in the NFL right now.
No, they're not, and that's one of the criticisms of this team. And they were supposed to get to that a little bit more this year with their remade secondary, but they've had injuries to the 2 guys who are holdovers from last year, Deshaun Elliott and Joey Porter Jr. So I think they're still trying to put together the pieces, and they still are talking about miscommunications in the secondary, something that was so much of a problem for them last year. How much of this was Carson Wentz having a good day, and how much of it's just Kevin O'Connell being that quarterback whisperer? Like, why is he so good? How is he so good at taking these castaway quarterbacks or these guys who are on second or third chances and somehow turning them into, I don't know, upper echelon quarterbacks in a lot of cases?
Yeah, I said this on an Atlanta radio station. And I just remember saying this, but like, because they asked me about the quarterback whisperer thing too. And I like the secret of the quarterback whisperer thing, I guess, if you want to call it that tagline, is the most simple and mundane and basic thing of just they focus so much on the fundamentals, footwork, where you put your eyes, and timing of the play. And really, from what I kind of understand, it is this offensive staff's belief that as long as the quarterback takes the right footwork, has an accurate base, has his eyes positioned in the right spot, there will be receivers coming into those visions and voids in that quarterback's vision, and all you have to do is distribute the ball. It's much easier, probably, the way I described it than it actually is when you're back there. But I really think, like with Sam Darnold last year, he used the phrase feet and eyes like 1,000 times. And really, what I think he meant by that is you don't have to try to read the entire field. It's just make sure your feet and eyes are positioned right here and then progress to the next spot in a efficient manner. And if you do that, things will probably work out as long as the protection's right and you can be accurate with the football. And so they drill the fundamentals a ton. They talk about them a ton. And so that's really why I think they've had success. I mean, you look at all the quarterbacks they've had and had success with. Sam Darnold was picked where he was for a reason. He has a golden arm. He's athletic. He's tough as hell. Kirk Cousins, I mean, Kirk takes a lot of shots from a lot of people, but he is very efficient. His arm strength still exists. And then Carson Wentz, I mean, he's had 3 seasons of 27 touchdowns and 7 picks. So it's not like he's a scrub pulled from the scrap heap. He was a backup in Los Angeles and Kansas City with Sean McVay and Andy Reid. So really, that to me, like I sometimes laugh at the quarterback whisper because I really think it's just they coach it at a very intentional level. And that should be the baseline everywhere. If that's not, and I'm the GM or the owner of the team, I'd be asking what the hell is, like, why are we not at that level? So, yeah, it fires me up, as you can probably tell.
Well, and the Steelers fans know, like, the quarterback play from this team has been pretty poor over time. And it does not happen everywhere. I think it takes having the right offensive coordinator who knows your quarterback, sequencing plays, having good plays with good answers to different coverages. And it seems like Kevin O'Connell has all of that. He's not just a quarterback whisperer. He's an excellent play caller in terms of rhythm, knowing what plays to call, when to call them.
And I would say this, if there is an ingredient that Kevin O'Connell instills that I do think his touch with this is different, is he gets the quarterback to believe in themselves, in the offense, in the skill players they have. And it has felt like, whether it's Kirk, whether it's Sam Darnold, whether it was Josh Dobbs for a stint, whether it's Carson Wentz now, like they become the best version of themselves from a confidence standpoint, mental standpoint. That stuff obviously matters. So as tongue-in-cheek as I probably answered the question from the beginning, there is something to just the level of faith these guys end up having in the environment around them, and it feels pretty important.
Now, you mentioned obviously the return of Jordan Addison, obviously how stellar of a talent he is. Just what does he do specifically? How much does he elevate this offense? And how much is there the potential to do so on Sunday, knowing that because he's been practicing, right? I believe that was like the terms of the suspension. Like he's been allowed to be around the team at the facility, but just not playing, obviously.
Yeah, he wasn't in the building, I believe, for the first week, and then he's been back in. But it's funny, if you walk past him in the locker room, and you guys are both in there, so like, he is, I mean, I think I'm taller than him. I might even be bigger than him with the way I'm eating right now amid this 3-game start of the season. But out on the field, his ability to separate is, I mean, I'm not sure if that is teachable or he just has an innate feel to change gears within routes, keep his stride. He's a special, like the way I've always described it is if you came out to practice, didn't know any player, their name, and you just watch, you'd be like, that guy moves at a different gear than everybody else not named Justin Jefferson. And so, he provides this offense just another weapon. And it really almost forces defenses to play with two high safeties when you have those two guys at receiver. And then now they're running the ball at a very efficient clip with Jordan Mason. So it becomes a very difficult offense to stop. You incorporate, like Mike mentioned, the sequencing of the play calls and kind of the design. And this group is pretty motivated. I mean, they were pretty upset with the way the offense performed the first 2 weeks and felt like it just didn't even rise close to the standard that they've produced really since Kevin O'Connell's been the head coach here in 2022. So they need this game, and they need next week's game against Cleveland, because after the bye week, you got Philly, Baltimore, Detroit, and the Los Angeles Chargers. So if they don't bank some of these games, they're going to be in tough shape down the stretch.
I think you were frozen. I think we have you back now.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties saving the day.
If they don't bank some of these games, then they're going to be in a tough situation down the stretch.
Mike, are you going or?
How about you ask the question?
This is high quality stuff. We're easing into it. We're getting into the podcasting world here. Looking at the stats, because not only did Mike bring stats, I brought stats, and then I should also add this caveat that he sent me this stat too. So he's really doing a lot of the research on this.
No, but Jenna has the stats and information department. Like, she'll just be sitting on the couch and she'll be like, "Oh my God, did you know that?" It's normally a hockey stat, so it is trademarked the Jenna Horner Stats and Information Department. That's where we get all of our stats here on this podcast. But go ahead, Jenna. You can go.
It's very true. Well, per the Jenna Horner Stats and Information Department, the Vikings are currently the fourth highest scoring offense in the league. Is this a really good offensive team, or is this just a byproduct of putting nearly 50 points up against a Bengals team that looked atrocious? 14 of those 48 points coming from the defense, and then the win against the Bears? Or is this just, again, is it a byproduct of those couple games here?
No, it's definitely the latter point of the Bengals. The Bengals had a rough go on Sunday in every respect. I mean, if you're on Bengals radio these days, it's probably a disaster not knowing that Joe Burrow's not going to be back. And, I mean, the Vikings also scored 2 defensive touchdowns in that game, which cushioned the offense. Everything was going right. I mean, they were making 62-yard field goals. It was like an ultimate get-right spot for the Vikings. The first 2 weeks were very tough. But, again, and I probably should have highlighted this more or put more emphasis on it. The Vikings did not have Christian Darrisaw, who is one of the best left tackles in the NFL, in the first 2 weeks. He was still rehabbing from a torn ACL suffered last year. And he is just such a high-quality player. And you guys know this, just as everyone listening knows with football. You pull out an elite offensive lineman from the trenches, it's going to affect the run game. It's going to affect pass protection. It's going to leave you in long downs and distances. I mean, that would be the one thing that I would say for the Steelers in this game is, like, can they get the Vikings in third and long situations? Minnesota is 1 for 14 when they are in third and long thus far this year. And for me, that is such a quarterback, like the quarterback rises above in those situations, and it just hasn't been able to happen thus far. So that would be the one area. But again, with Jordan Addison back, with how they're running the football with Jordan Mason as kind of the bell cow that they haven't had since Dalvin Cook, it can be a pretty formidable group. And then you have the defense and all that they throw at the opposing offense. And I mean, you have a level of talent and the vision for this team that they had going back to the spring. Like, the Vikings are spending $346 million in cash on this roster. That's more than any team is spending in the NFL. So they expected this to be a good group, and you saw it at least against a downtrodden Cincinnati team. You saw what I think many people here believed them to be capable of.
Well, it should be a good game, and I'm really looking forward to that Brian Flores versus Aaron Rodgers matchup. I wonder, is Aaron Rodgers going to have another nightmare type day, or is this a different story another time that he sees Flores?
Well, we didn't talk about it, but I mean, the sliding doors moment of this offseason is pretty fascinating. I
That
mean, you
too.
had the Vikings, you know, Sam Darnold leaves. The Vikings tried to re-sign Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones goes to Indianapolis. We all know what they've done there. And then internally, the Rodgers conversation was kicked around. Aaron and Kevin have known each other. Kevin O'Connell have known each other for decades. He ultimately signs in Philly. That allows the Vikings to forge ahead with JJ McCarthy. It's just kind of a wild sliding doors thing for each side. But it's gonna be fun in Dublin as we eat bacon and cabbage. Apparently that's a thing.
Bangers and mash.
So yeah, Irish stew. I mean, I was looking stuff up earlier. I don't know if I'm willing to eat it, but I can't believe we're gonna be in London. It's gonna happen somehow.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, you're gonna have one heck of a 2 weeks. Can we get a prediction from you before you go here? Have
Well,
you
here
looked into it enough? Are you comfortable to give us a prediction?
here's what I'd say. You know this about me. I watch the film of the opposing team every week, and I go through it all, and because I'm insane. I don't know why, but I just like having a feel for the other team. I haven't done that on the Steelers yet. So I don't feel comfortable making this prediction I'm about to make, but I'm gonna make it. I think the Vikings are gonna win by at least a touchdown. Just think it's a game they need to win. I mean, if the opposing defense isn't going to throw a lot at Carson Wentz pre and post snap, just don't think it's going to be difficult enough. Now, if a defense can make it very difficult and make Carson question what he's saying, I do think that gives you an opportunity. But we'll see. That's my prediction. But by the time I see you in Dublin, both of you, I'll have watched Tyrrell Austin's defense, and I just can't wait to do that.
We will tweet if you update your prediction in any way, shape, or form, we will tweet it out in Dublin to let the people know that
Thank you.
they have the most up to date information. It's what we're here for. We're glad to assist. Well, Alec, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Give yourself a little plug here. Where can people find you, follow you on social media, and read all about your Vikings coverage?
Yeah, I write for a website called theathletic.com. We have sports writers all over the world. I also host a podcast with the very creative name, The Alec Lewis Show. I think I became the first to use my name and show as the host. But no, thank you. It was fun to hop on. Again, for you guys to have me before Kevin Fishbane says a lot about the nature of you guys' podcast. But
Well, we're gonna have Kevin on later when obviously the Steelers play the Bears later this year. So the real question is he gonna get you on his podcast before, or is he? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, look, breaking in is again, like I said, it is a star-studded show. So for me to expect to be on that, that would be lofty. I've got a lot of work to do to arrive at that place. But looking forward to seeing you guys in London. It will be fun. Um, I'm flying Aer Lingus, kind of nervous about it, but don't. Hopefully, Aer Lingus doesn't see this.
Aer Lingus is supposedly wonderful. We are also flying Aer Lingus. So I've heard people have had nothing but great experiences. I'm hoping that remains the case.
It better, it really better because, yeah, I've heard good things. I'm excited, but it'll be fun. Looking forward to it. I'll give you the updated prediction after I dive into the tape later this week.
sounds good. Awesome, Alec. Well, thank you so much for the time, and we'll see you out there in Dublin.
And welcome back to the Yinziders podcast. It's time now for Zeke's picks, with the caveat, Mike, that Zeke unfortunately is not here to make the picks in person. However, he did give us his picks for the week, and we are going to share them with you all.
Yeah, Zeke is on a vacation at his grandparents' house right now while we go to Ireland.
But he got a new bone for vacation too.
He got a
That's
new
how you
bone,
know.
which is big time, even though his parlay last week was a big stinker.
It was not a good one, Zeke. Not good. Hopefully, he can redeem himself this week. We're just going to dive right in. Let's start with the Thursday night game. The Seahawks are heading to Arizona for a matchup with the Cardinals. The Cardinals, of course, losing James Conner to that season ending ankle injury. Who do you have in this one, Mike? And then I'll give who Zeke has.
I think this is a tight one. I think it honestly could go either way. I believe that the Cardinals are favored in it. I don't know, maybe I'm just influenced by how Seattle looked against the Steelers. But I feel like they've got a pretty good balance offensively. I like their defensive coordinator / head coach, Mike McDonald, does a great job with his schemes and stuff. I think I'm going to go with Seattle.
Zeke also is going with Seattle. He liked what he saw out of their special teams last week. Two special teams making massive impacts for the Seahawks so far this season. We'll end with the Steelers-Vikings game, of course. Let's move to the 1 o'clock slate. Washington at the Falcons. Falcons making some midweek coaching changes already. It's week 3. So
What
I
did they
believe
do? They fired their wide receivers coach who used to be with the Steelers. Like, that's going to be the answer. Seems like
I
a very
do
random
think.
move to make. Desperation. I can't go with them in this one. I just, after the way that they played, getting shut out, anybody but them right now.
Yeah, Zeke likes the Commanders in this one. He feels confident. Jaden Daniels potentially has the potential to return this week. Did I read that correctly? Or am I making
Yeah,
things
but
up?
Terry McLaurin could be out. So lots of
Mm,
injury implications. Even though I just feel like last week there were injury concerns and Washington still got the job done. So I feel like I'm going to go with Washington again.
yeah, Zeke, you and Zeke so far 2 for 2. The New Orleans Saints at the Buffalo Bills, which
Buffalo
at the
Bills
time
next game.
I wanted to add at the
Buffalo
time of
Bills next
recording
game.
at the time of recording
Buffalo
this,
Bills next game.
Zeke also picked the Bills. Yes, the Bills are favored at the time we're recording this by 16 and a half.
Crazy.
We didn't ask Zeke though if he feels like he could take that one. He kind of still feels a little bit salty after that big spread and losing that last week. Yeah, the Bills. If you're in a survivor pool or if you're in one of those, you have to pick a best game. Zeke says make this your pick
Not
of the week.
survivor pool. You got to save in your survivor
That
pool.
that's not a survivor pool. Your win of the week pool because people do those too.
Pick 'em. Pick 'em.
People do those too. This one's intriguing to me. The Browns at the Lions.
I
Only
feel
because of
like
the
the
spread.
Browns used up all of their dark magic last week. Whatever they did to win a game that no one in the world thought that they could win. They do have a pretty good defense, or at least statistically, they've played very well defensively. I just feel like they're not going to be able to do it 2 weeks in a row.
No, and their pass rush is even scarier now that they have extra pieces with Miles Garrett on it, but I still think it is not going to be enough against why are you looking
What
confused?
extra piece? What do you mean extra pieces?
They have more guys on their defensive line that are actually good.
But Miles Garrett's been on the team for a long time. What do you mean by that?
They have more guys that are complementary to Garrett.
Okay, I got you.
That was my point. Mina Kimes had this great video today. I'm kind of like paraphrasing it a little bit. I'll send it to you. It was really, really great stuff. But all that being said, Zeke's going with the Lions, especially after what he saw on Monday Night Football. Dan Campbell is just so fun, and Zeke loves fun football.
Yeah, I watched that game and I wanted to say the Lions went into Baltimore and beat the Ravens at their own game with a physical, run heavy, long drive kind of game. But then when Dan Campbell on 4th and 2 dials up a pass play, I was like, no. Dan Campbell went in and won with Dan Campbell football. I'm starting to think that the Lions could be the team to beat. Afterwards, he was talking about this was the barometer in the AFC. You saw one of the best teams in the AFC. You know how you measure up. they were Super Bowl contenders coming in, and I think that the bandwagon and the hype train is only going to continue to roll now after that win.
Every part of that team looks intimidating, scary, terrifying, heck of entertaining to watch, all of the above there. This game also, again, I really have not deep dove in. Zeke just gave me his picks before he left. The Panthers go to New England for a matchup with the Patriots. Zeke likes New England in this one, but he's a little bit cautious just because I think there's so many unknowns with both these teams.
I think the Patriots, like I like Drake May. I think that he's a pretty good quarterback. I think that Vrabel's a good coach and finds ways schematically to exploit the opponent. I feel like maybe this is a game where like the Patriots lost because they beat themselves. This week they're going to refocus on ball security, playing a cleaner game, and just the Panthers have too many question marks as they're in the middle of their own rebuild.
The Chargers come east for a matchup with the New York Football Giants, who made a midweek quarterback change. It is now Jackson Dart at the helm, who, as me, the Giants fan, Zeke knows this. I'm incredibly excited to see him play. I'm incredibly terrified based on the offensive line. But Zeke is going against the Giants once again, knowing how good the Chargers look and have looked through the last couple weeks.
Yeah, this is a tough debut for Jackson Dart because last year the Chargers were the number one defense, or at least scoring defense, in the NFL. Not the easiest team to be playing your first game. I just feel like the Chargers right now, they went from being that like fringe, frisky team last year to now starting to be a team people are talking about potentially making noise. It seems like Justin Herbert is taking his game to even another level. I really like the running back of Marion Hampton. I think that he really complements what they want to do as a big physical football team that likes to run the football a lot. So I like the Chargers in this one.
This game is interesting. They're all interesting, but there's so many fun little storylines and parts to things. The Eagles are going to Tampa Bay for a matchup with the Bucks, and I think both of these teams have found some magic so far to start their seasons. Obviously,
what's the line on this one? Do you know the line?
According to ESPN, the line, the Eagles are favored by 3.5.
Okay, so what I would say is I like the Eagles to win and Tampa Bay to cover. Last year, Tampa Bay was clutch at like playing really tight, heartbreaking games against good opponents. And I could envision this being another similar one in that same kind of mold. There's also Mike Evans is out in this one. That's pretty significant. You know, I don't think the Eagles are kind of doing their classic thing that a lot of great teams do where they don't play their best games, but they still find ways to win. People start worrying, is this team going to fall apart? Is this the year that the Eagles unravel? All of a sudden, at the end of the year, they're going to put it back together. Like, I was laughing. I was in an airport, and on the big screen, they were like, is it a problem that they haven't gotten A.J. Brown going yet? And I remember that was the same conversation right before they played the Steelers, and he went for like 100+, and all of a sudden everything was great, hunky-dory over there in Philadelphia. I think it's going to be a similar kind of season for the Eagles. Like, they've got question marks about especially some of their cornerbacks after they let Slay go. Keely Ringo, who was supposed to step up and be that guy, has not been to this point. So there's a little bit of shuffling and uncertainty in their secondary. They have to figure out some things. But I just feel like when you can tell a team we're going to run the football and do it anyway, and you've got Saquon Barkley behind that offensive line, I think that's a formula for a lot of winning football.
Were they down, I believe, I think it was like 19 points at one point to the Rams?
Yeah, and some of that I think Sean McVay got a little bit too conservative in his play calling. Mm-hmm. Some breaks went the Eagles' way, the blocked field goal. I think the Rams are going to be contenders to the very end as well. I think that was a statement loss by the Ravens, or by the Rams.
By the Rams, yeah.
But yeah, you got to get the job done.
We'll get to the Rams. They're 2 picks away. But for now, this does not seem like a big entertaining game at any point. And if you have this in your home market as one of the big games this week, I'm sorry. The Titans at the Texans. Eef. Houston's favored by 7.5.
That seems big. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a whole conversation right now going on about C.J. Stroud. I mean, he burst onto the scene as a rookie and just looked phenomenal. And it felt like they were trying to surround him with more weapons. They already have a defensive-minded head coach that I think was doing an excellent job on that side of the ball. Like, I looked at them and I was thinking, like, okay, in 2 years, they're going to start becoming that team that has the quarterback on a rookie contract, the defensive-minded head coach. This could be a team that makes noise. They've not gotten over that hump, but in some senses, it seems like C.J. Stroud has regressed. I think that they're going to be a team that's kind of up and down, flirting with 500 throughout the year, but against a team like the Titans, this looks like a get-right game for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, Zeke is very apprehensive about this one too. He's going with the Texans. He does not like them to cover, though. This might be, I think there's a couple games of the week, but this would be the one to me that I'm circling. The Colts are heading to the Rams, and I love this one. Zeke is riding with his Indianapolis Colts. You heard it here first. I think Zeke was the first believer, aside from Colts fans. Zeke was the first true believer of Daniel Jones, of Indiana Jones, and the Colts.
Yeah, I think that Shane Steichen saved his job by inserting Daniel Jones. I mean, I always had faith in I thought Shane Steichen was a great offensive mind, and I was kind of surprised at how little success Anthony Richardson had. But I think just with a different style of quarterback, a guy who's a little bit more experienced, then Shane Steichen is able to work his magic. And, like, I don't know, I've watched how many games where Shane Steichen has eaten Mike Tomlin's lunch and Terrell Austin's lunch. I mean, it was pretty embarrassing that Joe Flacco carved up the NFL's highest paid defense last year. And even today we got Mike Tomlin. He made a reference to that game talking about how, like, it's not always the worst thing if there's a veteran backup playing in place of a young quarterback. And he was saying, like, last year, he was telling them, hey, keep Anthony Richardson upright. We don't want to see Flacco. I think it goes to show, like, Anthony Richardson has turned out to be a total bust. At least he is at this point. And if Shane Steichen has a competent quarterback, he can scheme things up and work to that quarterback's strengths.
Zeke is who are you going with? Who's your pick?
Still, I'm going to go with the Rams, though. I think that I'm going against Zeke's Colts. I think that the Rams, after their statement loss, like, they're going to be hungry for that win, and I think that they can bounce back.
The Jags head west. They're in San Francisco. The Niners without Nick Bosa. They lost him for the season with that torn ACL. Zeke is cautiously apprehensive. He likes the Jags and a little bit of an upset here. Granted, San Francisco's only favored by 2.5.
I think I'll probably go with the 49ers, just because I feel like there's like a handful of teams in the league I barely ever see. They don't play on primetime a lot. They play in the 1 o'clock window when the Steelers are playing, and I just, like, can't figure out what they're about.
Or they play in the 4
Jaguars are that
o'clock
team,
window
like,
while you're writing.
Yeah, a couple years ago, they were like the up and coming team. It seemed like they had Trevor Lawrence. He was starting to figure things out. They looked like maybe they were going to dominate the AFC South, and then just like didn't. And last year just like unraveled, and I don't know what to make of them right now. So I just mostly because I don't know what the heck to make of them, I can't go with them.
If you had started the season coming in and saying that the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs were going to be playing each other, and I'm doing quick math here, so I'm like slowing myself down as I'm doing this, and one of those teams was going to end up 1-3 because it's week 4, so there's 4 games. I would have. Thank you so much. We try here. I was afraid I was saying week 4, and then I was gonna be like, they're both 1-3. That's not right. They're both 1-2. and one of them's going to come out of this game being 1-3, I would have thought you were crazy. But this is just an interesting way the AFC is taking shape in the early portions of this season. I think water will find its level. I also don't know if the Chiefs are nearly the team that we've seen them be in the last couple of years. I still think Baltimore's okay. Zeke likes the Ravens in this one because they are not happy after that loss to Detroit at home. A little butt kicking at home.
Yeah, the Ravens right now, they're the top scoring offense in the league, but their defense can't stop anybody. And It is pretty tough to stop the Lions, especially a team that's going to be committed to going for it on 4 downs. It's hard to stop teams in this league like that. They've got things to figure out big time, especially on defense. I think this is a coin flip game. I'll go with the Ravens too, but I might end up flipping that eventually.
The Bears in Vegas. Ben Johnson gets his first win. Caleb Williams. There we go. I was going to say Caleb Johnson. Like, that's not right. Caleb Williams played arguably the best game that we've seen him play in his young career. And you felt like you were going to get that when you have Ben Johnson as his head coach. It's just the confidence that he's instilling, all of that. But the Bears get their first win. They're favored going to Vegas, and Zeke's riding with Chicago. They are playing with a little bit of fun. I think the Raiders, to me, are still kind of like don't know what to make of them. But I think this can be No, this can, I think, and Zeke gave me his opinion too, that this can be kind of a little bit of Chicago getting the ball rolling, getting some momentum going here, going out and getting a big road win in Vegas.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that Ben Johnson is an excellent offensive coordinator. And to me, like, if Caleb Williams doesn't succeed, it's not going to be because he wasn't put in the right situations. It's going to be because he's not that guy. And he's starting to show some growth. They're starting to pull out some of those fun Ben Johnson trick plays. I just feel like this is another year where the Raiders are going to be like that floundering team that we've seen so often. So I like the Bears in this one.
Zeke is sad he can't go to Vegas to bet on this game specifically. The Sunday night game, everyone can't stop talking about because how could you not? The Packers, Micah Parsons, going back to Dallas, going to take on the Cowboys. No video tribute. I saw Jerry Jones was saying some sort of he didn't feel it would be appropriate or blah, 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 something in that realm. Zeke loves the Packers here, even with the injuries they've been dealing with because of how terrible Dallas's defense looks. Is that the theme so far to start the year, that defenses look really bad and defenses you expected to look decent? I'm not saying the Cowboys, obviously, but
the Dallas Cowboys, they've got problems on defense, and they took a star player off of their defense. I think Cowboys, like, every year there's so much hype around them. We had to do something at The Athletic, like, what's the team that's going to fall shortest of expectations or like something like that, and I said Dallas Cowboys. We already had our first George Pickens crash out, slamming his helmet, posting cryptically on Instagram, deleting the Instagram. So if you had the over-under at 3 weeks, congratulations, you won that bet.
Golf clap.
Yeah, so definitely going with the Packers in this one.
2 Monday night games again because it's week 4. We're having fun. The Jets at the Dolphins. Ew. Zeke did not like this one in any way, shape, or form. Let me look at the line here. I don't even know. Miami's favored by 2.5. Yeah, Zeke said this is a coin flip, really. Take either one. He's going with the Jets, but doesn't love it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what to do about this one either. Because I keep wanting to believe in Mike McDaniel as an offensive coordinator. And, like, just 2 years ago in 2023, they were, like, a top 5 scoring offense when Tua was healthy. And, they still have some good pieces, a good offensive mind. I just think that maybe things have gotten, like, too big for Mike McDaniel. He seems like the classic guy who could be a fantastic coordinator, not a good head coach, to manage all the extra things that go with running a football team. That said, I don't know. I want to believe in the Dolphins. I want to feel like they're going to eventually find a way. So I think I'll go with the Dolphins.
And rounding things out here, the Bengals go to Denver to take on the Broncos. Zeke says put all your money on Denver because the Bengals with Joe Burrow were basically just Joe Burrow and Trey Hendrickson, and now they do not have that. And we all saw what happened with the Vikings, just absolute embarrassment. That was the worst loss the Bengals have ever had in their history, ever, last
And
week.
they've had some embarrassing ones. Yeah, I think you have to go with Denver in this one. Like, so much of what the Bengals were counting on is Joe Burrow bailing out a really bad defense that they've done very little to address. And without Joe Burrow, I feel like they've got very little chance in most of the games that they play. They're going to have to be like just get lucky or have a fluky game. I think they're going to win maybe like 3 games while Burrow is out, and Burrow's going to come back, and it's going to be that situation just like last year where he needs to be basically perfect. And I think that he's probably going to come like 1 game short of them qualifying for the playoffs. So I like definitely not the Bengals in this one.
And that's if, too, the timeline for Cincinnati and Joe Burrow all goes according to plan, because the turf toe injury that he has and the way that takes everything when you plant your foot, when you cut, when you pivot, all of the things that you need a quarterback to do and that Joe Burrow lives and breathes and dies by, that is... the timeline has to go like perfect. Talking with Jerome Bettis, he was telling us about this last week. Like, if it doesn't, don't expect him. Like, there's a chance he might not come back.
Yeah, I mean, there have been incidents where turf toe has ended people's careers. So you hope that doesn't happen with Joe Burrow. Jenna, we didn't pick Vikings Steelers. Who
We're
does Zeke
coming
have in
back
that?
to it. This was a tough one for Zeke because it's Ireland. It's going to be fun. There's going to be a ton of Steelers fans. Zeke doesn't think he can go against or can go for them, though. He thinks just the Vikings are a better team. He's going back to what he saw a year ago from how this Vikings defense played Aaron Rodgers. He thinks it's going to be a close game, but he just is a little too cautious and likes the Vikings better in this game just based on knowing all of the intel with what we see from Brian Flores.
Yeah, I can look at this game in 2 ways. On one hand, I can look at it and say it's a trip overseas, Ireland, festive environment. Could be another one of those like, hey, how did the Steelers win this type of game? But I just think that there's so many things working against them. Especially, I think that it could be a long day for the Steelers offense. I feel like Brian Flores is going to make life miserable for a 41-year-old quarterback who threw 3 interceptions against them last year. I think that he's going to really confuse and create problems for the young offensive line based on some of those different pressures, simulated pressures, all the variety of looks that he throws at them. And like, I just think that the Steelers offense defense would have to play like a really good game, and I just haven't seen them do it yet. And especially with Jordan Addison coming back, I think it's gonna be a close game. I think it's gonna be like a 3-point game. I think it could go either way, but I think I'm leaning towards the Vikings as well right now.
And I believe the Vikings are favored by 2.5, and I feel like that fits exactly where I see this game going. I don't think they win by more than a field goal. They might win by a field goal, but to me, this just seems like a game that Minnesota wins. We're going to talk a lot about Ireland on next week's episode. We wanted to preface that too. We will have a special guest joining us.
Maybe.
I don't know if I should tease it this far ahead.
Maybe.
Drum roll, a little
Maybe
bit of a
special
tease.
guest. We'll see. We got big time this week by our special guest, so we'll see if we don't get big time.
We did. Hoping no big timing next week. But thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Yinziders. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Like, subscribe, give us some good ratings, or tell us what you think, really. We are open to feedback, constructive feedback, good feedback, but we hope you really enjoy this episode and all of our episodes so far. We will see you next week.